Alright, I'm back with functionality. Alright, so you're going to need to go switch out of your modeling tab into rendering. And you'll notice up here that there's a little tab that says render. If you click on that, so this is very important. If you are rendering in Arnold, you need to use sequence render, or sorry, render sequence. Usually open the render tabs, and if you want to, you can like override the settings from your render settings if you want to. It really doesn't super matter. But pretty much, you should be able to just like render sequence and close. It's going to pull up your render view and just sort of slowly start rendering stuff in the background. My cat's sitting on the ukulele. But yeah, so it'll just render this, and you can see if I go to if I go to my images folder here under this character, it's going to start adding in those files. So you can see here that I have like TurnTabe 2 version 1, and then once this actually is finished saving, it's going to actually save this file. If you get partway through your render and you're like, oh crap, I've made a mistake, I need to stop this. For some reason, hitting escape works sometimes, but you can either hit escape or go to render, oh god. In this case, I think I'm going to hit escape. The bad thing about render sequence is it like forces it to render in this render view, which takes a little longer. But if you use batch render with Arnold, it will watermark your stuff, and I will take off points if your stuff has giant Arnold watermarks on it. So please, for Arnold, use render sequence. If you do need to cancel that render, hitting escape stops it sometimes. If it doesn't, just hit cancel batch render again under your rendering tab there. If you are rendering with Redshift, you can just go ahead and go, again, in this render tab, just go down to batch render. And I pretty much ignore these file options all the time. I just hit batch render. It'll save your file in case something crashes, which sometimes does happen. And you can see down here, it'll say, like, it's rendering with Arnold. And that will totally watermark my stuff. I'm actually going to let that render because I want to make a point about the watermarks. They're actually not, the Arnold ones aren't as bad until you start playing with the settings of your image, but there, if I see watermarks on your stuff, I will be salty and very much not happy with that. So in this case, I got out of render, so I'm just going to cancel this. Yes, cool. And you can see it's canceled my render. So this actually looks like it's actually saved this darker, which is usually many times why I will use TIFFs, higher resolution TIFFs. So in this case, I'm going to skip existing frames because I want to see if there's a difference between using 32 and 16-bit images. And I'm going to do render and batch render. And you'll notice that the batch render did go a little bit faster because it was not rendering in that render view. But because it did render with the render view, I had my color managed image check. So since it's saving it through here, it's going to save it as that color managed image, which batch render kind of requires you to I see it hasn't started yet. I'm like, that's a suspicious image. They do take a while to get started. Anyway, that's pretty much it. The takeaway from this video is if you are using, if you are rendering with Arnold, use render sequence. If you are rendering with Redshift, you can do batch render. The other thing, if you're using a trial version of Redshift, it's going to watermark your stuff no matter what. If you render that on a computer with a real license, like the lab computers, it will remove that. So you can absolutely work on like your home laptop on the trial version and then come in and like render on the real version of Redshift. But again, if I see watermarks on your stuff, I'm going to dock points. Well, that's gross. So the rest of this video is pretty much just going to be me like running around, seeing if I can troubleshoot why this is being dark. So that's pretty much it for setting up a turntable. If you want to stick around for me rambling, you're welcome to. It's going to be really like undirected and gross, and I honestly don't know how long it's going to go on. But yeah, so you can pretty much punk out this video if you want right now. Oh shit! View transform. Okay, so here you can see the, since I'm rendering with this batch render, you can see the gross Arnold watermark on this thing. Oh! Holy crap! Yeah, no, I am super dumb. Okay, that was actually really dumb. So, the first render, this like really dark render, it started rendering the second frame. Because I canceled the render and didn't let it finish, this was sitting here, and then I said, skip existing frames. So it's like, cool, this frame exists, I'm gonna skip it. Great. So it skipped that, and that is why it rendered starting with the third image. But you can see that switching this to a 32-bit render does actually fix all of the darkness weird issues that I was having. For grins, I've switched back to 16, and I'm seeing what happens if I do use output transform. But usually... Oh, right, there's a partial render as well. You can see down here, it's like, hey, the percentage of the rendering done, Arnold, is so slow. But yeah, so... I'm just curious to see what happens with that. Yesterday I didn't really have any luck until I switched it to 32-bit TIFFs. Render faster. Thank you. Surprisingly. Okay, so that did a whole lot of nothing. Ow. Render. Cancel. Alright, so yeah. Yes, please do. Okay, so I would just use... I haven't really found a huge difference between either of these guys. Just set your things to be float 32 for the format, and that should fix any weird issues with it rendering or saving darker. Yeah, so that's pretty much my spiel for the turntable.